Life in the coastal town suited Clara perfectly. The rhythm of the waves and the simplicity of her new surroundings brought a calm she hadn't felt in years. Her cottage was modest but charming, with large windows that let in sunlight and offered breathtaking views of the ocean. She spent her mornings sipping coffee on the porch, sketching the horizon or jotting down ideas for her next painting. It was a far cry from the chaos of legal battles and construction crews, and Clara relished every moment of it. But Clara wasn't content to simply enjoy her newfound wealth and peace. She had learned too much during her fight with the HOA to let those lessons go to waste. Inspired by the people who had supported her along the way, neighbors, strangers online, even some local activists, she decided to use her resources to make a difference. She began hosting small community gatherings at her home, inviting residents to discuss issues affecting their town. Whether it was preserving the coastline from overdevelopment or advocating for better public transportation, Clara became a voice for positive change. Her advocacy work didn't stop there. Clara traveled occasionally to speak at conferences about property rights and civic engagement. Audiences listened intently as she recounted her story, laughing at her witty remarks and applauding her courage. "I never imagined I'd become an activist," she often joked during these talks. But sometimes life throws you into the deep end, and you learn how to swim. One of her proudest achievements came when she partnered with a nonprofit organization to create a legal fund for individuals facing similar disputes with corporations or government entities. Named after her parents, the fund provided free legal assistance to homeowners and small landowners fighting for their rights. Knowing she could help others avoid the stress and uncertainty she had endured filled Clara with immense satisfaction. Back in her hometown, the tunnel continued to operate smoothly, carrying trains loaded with passengers and goods between towns. Occasionally, Clara would hear updates about its success through news articles or friends who still lived nearby. Though she no longer owned it, part of her felt connected to the structure buried beneath the earth. It was a reminder of what she had overcome, a symbol of resilience and determination. On quieter days, Clara thought about the journey that had brought her here. From the moment she discovered workers digging trenches on her land to the day she signed the multi-million-dollar deal, every step had shaped her into the person she was today. She realized now that the battle hadn't just been about her property. It had been about proving to herself, and to the world, that one person could stand up against injustice and win. Clara's story spread beyond her small circle, inspiring countless others. Local newspapers wrote features about her transformation from a reclusive artist to a philanthropist and advocate. School teachers shared her tale with students as an example of perseverance and integrity. Even filmmakers expressed interest in turning her experience into a movie, though Clara politely declined. "My life isn't about fame," she told them. "It's about doing what's right." As time passed, Clara settled comfortably into her role as a pillar of her new community. She joined a book club, volunteered at the local library, and even took up surfing, a hobby she never imagined trying in her younger years. Life was full of surprises, and Clara embraced each one with open arms. One evening, as she sat on her porch watching the sun dip below the horizon, Clara reflected on everything she had gained, not just financially, but emotionally and spiritually. She had started her journey as someone who simply wanted to protect her land, but she had ended up discovering strength she didn't know she possessed. The tunnel may have been sold, the legal fights long over, but the legacy of her actions lived on, in her heart, in her community, and in the lives of those she touched. The sound of the waves lapping against the shore filled the air, soothing and steady. Clara smiled softly, feeling grateful for the twists and turns that had led her to this moment. Life, she realized, was like the ocean, unpredictable yet beautiful. And just like the tide, she had risen to meet every challenge, emerging stronger than before. It was one of those evenings where everything felt heavier than usual. Alex had spent the day juggling back-to-back meetings at work, followed by a long commute home. Their mind was already racing with thoughts of dinner, homework help for the kids, and catching up on laundry. The last thing they needed was drama. But as fate would have it, drama found them anyway. As Alex turned into their quiet street, they spotted the familiar glow of a parking space just a few feet away from their building. It wasn't much, a standard visitor spot, but after hours of stress, it felt like a small victory. With a sigh of relief, Alex carefully parked the car, double-checking that they were perfectly aligned within the lines. They grabbed their bag, locked the door, and started walking toward the entrance, already mentally preparing for the chaos waiting for them inside their apartment. But before Alex could even reach the stairs, the sound of an engine revving caught their attention. Turning around, they saw Karen's shiny black SUV pulling up behind them. Karen rolled down her window, her oversized sunglasses perched atop her head despite the fading sunlight. Her lips curled into a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Excuse me," she called out in a tone that was anything but polite. "That's my parking spot." Alex froze for a moment, unsure if they'd heard correctly. "I'm sorry," they replied, turning to face her fully. "You heard me," Karen snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "That spot is mine. I always park there. Everyone knows that." Alex blinked, trying to process what was happening. They glanced at the empty spaces nearby, counting silently in their head. There weren't any others available, not for visitors, anyway. Taking a deep breath, Alex decided to stay calm. "Karen, I don't think that's how it works. These spots are first come, first served. I got here first, so—" Before Alex could finish, Karen interrupted, her voice rising with each word. "First come, first served. Are you serious right now? Do you know who I am? I've lived here longer than you, and I pay my HOA fees on time every month. You should show some respect." She gestured wildly toward the parking spot as if ownership of it was written in invisible ink only she could see. By now, a couple of neighbors had poked their heads out of windows or paused mid-walk to watch the unfolding scene. Alex felt a wave of frustration bubbling up but forced themselves to keep their cool. "Look, Karen, I understand you're upset, but this isn't personal. I followed the rules, and I'm not moving my car. If you want to talk to the HOA about changing the policy, go ahead. But tonight, this spot is mine." Karen's jaw tightened, and for a brief moment, Alex thought she might drive off in defeat. Instead, she slammed her car door shut and marched closer, her heels clicking loudly against the pavement. "You're making a big mistake," she hissed, jabbing a finger in Alex's direction. "People around here don't forget things like this. Mark my words, you'll regret crossing me." The threat hung in the air like smoke, heavy and suffocating. Alex stood their ground, refusing to let Karen intimidate them further. But deep down, they couldn't shake the feeling that this confrontation was far from over. Little did they know, Karen wasn't done yet. And what happened next would leave everyone speechless. The tension between Alex and Karen was thick enough to cut with a knife. Neighbors who had been casually observing from their windows or porches began inching closer, drawn to the escalating argument like moths to a flame. Some whispered among themselves, while others simply watched in stunned silence. The once peaceful evening air now crackled with hostility, all because of a single parking spot. Karen wasn't used to being challenged. In her mind, she was untouchable, a fixture of authority in the neighborhood. Her reputation for getting what she wanted preceded her, and most people gave in rather than risk her wrath. But Alex wasn't backing down, no matter how much Karen tried to bully them into submission. Every time she raised her voice or threw out another accusation, Alex responded calmly, refusing to let her provoke them further. "You're unbelievable," Karen spat, her face flushed with anger. "Do you have any idea how inconvenient this is for me? I've got plans tonight, and thanks to you, I'm going to be late." Alex crossed their arms, trying to keep their tone even. "I'm sorry if that's frustrating for you, but it doesn't change the fact that I got here first. Maybe next time, try coming home earlier." Karen's eyes narrowed, and for a split second, Alex thought they saw something flash across her expression, something darker, more volatile. But before they could process it, Karen stepped closer, invading their personal space. "You think you're so smart, don't you?" She sneered, her voice dripping with venom, standing there acting all righteous. "Well, let me tell you something. You're not fooling anyone." Without warning, Karen reached out and slapped Alex hard across the face. The sound echoed through the quiet neighborhood like a thunderclap, leaving everyone frozen in shock, including Alex. For a moment, time seemed to stop. Alex stumbled back, instinctively raising a hand to their stinging cheek. Their heart pounded in their chest as they stared at Karen, unable to believe what had just happened. The crowd of onlookers gasped audibly, some covering their mouths in disbelief. One neighbor muttered, "Oh my goodness," while another shook their head in disapproval. Even those who had previously dismissed Karen as harmless now looked at her with wide-eyed horror. No one expected things to escalate this far. For her part, Karen didn't seem fazed by the reaction. Instead, she straightened her posture, as if daring anyone to challenge her. "That's what you get for disrespecting me," she declared loudly, her voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. Then, without another word, she spun on her heel and stormed back to her SUV, slamming the door shut behind her. As Karen sped off, tires squealing against the asphalt, the neighborhood was left in stunned silence. Alex stood rooted to the spot, still processing what had just occurred. Their cheek burned where Karen's hand had made contact, but it was the sheer audacity of the act that left them reeling. How could someone react so violently over something as trivial as a parking spot? Officer Martinez, who had been walking his dog nearby when the altercation began, approached cautiously. He'd seen the entire exchange unfold and immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. "Are you okay?" he asked gently, placing a reassuring hand on Alex's shoulder. Alex nodded slowly, though their hands trembled slightly. "Yeah, I think so. I just can't believe she actually did that." Martinez frowned, his expression serious. "That was completely unacceptable behavior. If you're comfortable, we should document what happened. This isn't something you should have to deal with alone." As Alex nodded again, several neighbors stepped forward, offering their support. Mrs. Patel, an elderly woman who lived 2 doors down, spoke up first. "Don't worry, dear. We saw everything. We'll back you up if you decide to report her." Others chimed in, agreeing to testify if necessary. For the first time since the confrontation began, Alex felt a glimmer of hope. They weren't alone in this fight after all. But as the adrenaline started to wear off, reality set in. What came next wouldn't be easy. Reporting Karen meant facing potential backlash, not just from her, but possibly from the HOA board too. Still, standing there surrounded by supportive neighbors, Alex realized they couldn't let this go unanswered. Justice needed to be served, not just for their sake, but for the sake of the entire community. The moments after Karen's dramatic exit felt surreal, as if the neighborhood had been collectively holding its breath. Officer Martinez stayed by Alex's side, his presence calm and reassuring, like a steady anchor in the storm of emotion swirling around them. He knew how important it was to act quickly. Moments like this could easily fade into forgotten arguments if not addressed properly. "Let's take this step by step," he said gently, guiding Alex to a nearby bench under a street lamp. The soft glow illuminated their faces, casting long shadows on the pavement. As they sat down, Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady their racing thoughts. Their cheeks still stung, but the physical pain was nothing compared to the whirlwind of emotions inside. Anger, disbelief, and even a flicker of fear about what might come next. Officer Martinez pulled out his notebook and began jotting down details. "Start from the beginning," he encouraged. "Tell me exactly what happened." Alex recounted the events clearly, starting with finding the parking spot and ending with Karen's sudden violent outburst. As they spoke, More neighbors gathered around, eager to share what they'd witnessed. Mrs. Patel, the elderly woman who lived 2 doors down, stepped forward first. "I saw everything," she said firmly, her voice carrying the weight of someone who refused to stay silent. "That woman has caused trouble before, but this is unacceptable." Others nodded in agreement. Mr. Carter, a middle-aged man who often worked in his garage, chimed in next. "She came at you yelling like it was some kind of emergency," he said, addressing Alex. "And then she just slapped you. It was completely uncalled for." A younger couple holding hands added their account too, describing how Karen's SUV screeched away as though she were fleeing the scene of a crime. Officer Martinez listened intently, jotting down notes and occasionally asking clarifying questions. He assured everyone that their statements would be crucial in building a case against Karen. "This isn't just about one person's behavior," he explained. "It's about setting an example for the community. We can't let actions like this go unchecked." What struck Alex most during this exchange wasn't just the support from their neighbors. It was the way people seemed emboldened to speak up. For years, Karen had ruled the neighborhood with an iron fist, using her position on the HOA board to intimidate anyone who dared cross her. But now, standing together under the dim light of the street lamp, something had shifted. Neighbors who had once avoided conflict were stepping forward, united by the shared belief that enough was enough. One particularly surprising ally emerged: Mr. Thompson, a retired school principal who rarely interacted with anyone outside of HOA meetings. Clutching his cane, he shuffled closer to Alex and Officer Martinez. "I've got footage," he announced quietly but confidently. Everyone turned to look at him, curious. "My security camera captures part of the parking area. I'll check the recording tonight and send it over if it shows anything useful." A murmur of approval rippled through the group. Security footage would provide undeniable proof of what had transpired. A smoking gun that Karen wouldn't be able to wriggle out of. Alex felt a wave of gratitude wash over them. These weren't just random neighbors anymore. They were allies, standing shoulder to shoulder in the face of injustice. As the crowd slowly dispersed, promising to stay in touch and offer further assistance, Officer Martinez gave Alex one final piece of advice. "Don't wait too long to file a report," he said. "We need to strike while the iron's hot. And remember, you're not alone in this. People are watching, and they're ready to help." Walking back to their apartment later that night, Alex couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. On one hand, there was relief knowing they had such strong support from the community. On the other, there was apprehension about what lay ahead. Filing a formal complaint meant confronting Karen head-on, and Alex knew she wouldn't go down without a fight. Still, as they glanced back at the quiet neighborhood bathed in moonlight, they felt a spark of determination ignite within them. If Karen thought she could get away with slapping someone in public and walking away unscathed, she was about to learn just how wrong she was. The next morning, Alex woke up with a mix of emotions swirling in their chest. The stain on their cheek had faded, but the memory of Karen's slap lingered like a shadow they couldn't shake. Still, there was no time to dwell. The weight of what needed to be done pressed heavily on their mind. Filing a formal complaint wasn't something Alex had ever imagined themselves doing, but after the events of the previous night, it felt necessary. Justice had to be served, not just for them, but for everyone who had suffered under Karen's reign of intimidation. With Officer Martinez's encouragement fresh in their mind, Alex decided to visit the local police station early that day. As they walked through the quiet streets, neighbors greeted them with knowing nods and supportive smiles. Some even stopped to offer words of encouragement. "You're doing the right thing," one woman said as she watered her plants. Another neighbor simply gave a thumbs up from across the street. It was clear that word of the incident had spread quickly, and the community was rallying behind Alex in ways they hadn't expected. At the police station, Alex met with Officer Martinez again. He greeted them warmly and guided them into a small office where they could speak privately. Sitting at the desk, Alex recounted the entire story once more, this time with even greater clarity. They described how Karen had demanded the parking spot, escalated the argument, and finally resorted to violence. Officer Martinez listened intently, occasionally nodding or asking follow-up questions to ensure he had all the details. When Alex finished speaking, Officer Martinez leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly. "This is a serious matter," he said, his tone firm yet compassionate. "Assault is never acceptable, regardless of the circumstances. We'll make sure this is documented properly." He then explained the process. Alex would need to file an official report, which would include witness statements, any available evidence, and a detailed account of the incident. Thankfully, help arrived faster than Alex anticipated. By mid-morning, Mr. Thompson sent over the security footage from his camera. The grainy but clear video showed Karen pulling up, yelling at Alex, and then slapping them before storming off dramatically. Watching the clip made Alex's stomach churn. It was surreal to see the moment captured so starkly on film. But it also served as undeniable proof of Karen's actions. Officer Martinez reviewed the footage and nodded approvingly. "This will strengthen your case significantly," he said. "It leaves no room for doubt." Meanwhile, other neighbors began submitting their written statements. Mrs. Patel typed out a detailed account of what she'd seen, emphasizing Karen's aggressive behavior and lack of remorse. Mr. Carter included timestamps in his statement, noting when Karen arrived and how long the confrontation lasted. Even the younger couple contributed, adding vivid descriptions of Karen's dramatic exit in her SUV. Each piece of evidence added another layer of credibility to Alex's claim. But while Alex worked to build their case, Karen wasn't sitting idly by. Word soon reached Alex that Karen had filed her own counterclaim against them, accusing Alex of harassment and provoking the altercation. According to her version of events, Alex had been rude and confrontational, leaving her no choice but to defend herself. She even went so far as to contact the HOA board, demanding immediate action against Alex for disrupting neighborhood harmony. The HOA responded predictably, sending out a generic email reminding residents to resolve disputes amicably and avoid involving law enforcement, unless absolutely necessary. The thinly veiled message seemed aimed at pressuring Alex to drop the matter altogether. But instead of backing down, Alex felt their resolve harden. They knew the truth, and thanks to the overwhelming support from their neighbors, they weren't afraid to stand by it. As the day came to a close, Alex returned home feeling drained but determined. Filing the report had been emotionally exhausting, but it was also empowering. For the first time, they realized they weren't fighting this battle alone. Their neighbors' solidarity reminded them that communities could come together when it mattered most. And though the road ahead promised challenges, Alex felt ready to face whatever came next. After all, justice wasn't just about holding Karen accountable. It was about proving that kindness and fairness could prevail, even in the face of arrogance and aggression. The day of the hearing arrived, and Alex felt a mix of nerves and determination as they walked into the community center where the HOA mediation session was being held. The room was set up like a courtroom, with a long table in the middle flanked by chairs for both parties. At one end sat the mediator, a neutral third party appointed to oversee the discussion. And at the other, Karen, already seated with her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her usual air of confidence seemed slightly diminished today, replaced by an almost defensive posture. Behind her stood her husband, who looked equally uncomfortable, clutching a folder stuffed with papers. Alex took their seat across from Karen, accompanied by Officer Martinez, who had agreed to attend as a witness. Neighbors who had offered support also filled the rows of chairs along the sides of the room. Mrs. Patel sat near the front, knitting needles poised in her lap as if ready to defend Alex with every stitch. Mr. Carter leaned forward intently, while others exchanged quiet whispers, their presence a silent show of solidarity. For once, Karen didn't seem to command the room the way she normally did. The mediator began by explaining the purpose of the meeting: to resolve the dispute fairly based on evidence and testimonies. He emphasized that this wasn't about assigning blame but finding closure. Still, it was clear from the start that emotions ran high on both sides. Karen launched into her defense first, speaking quickly and gesturing dramatically. She claimed Alex had been confrontational and disrespectful, insisting she'd only acted out of self-defense. "I felt threatened," she declared, her voice rising sharply. What was I supposed to do? When it was Alex's turn to speak, they remained calm and composed, sticking to the facts. They recounted how they had followed HOA rules by parking legally, how Karen had demanded special treatment, and how she ultimately resorted to violence when things didn't go her way. Officer Martinez then stepped in, providing his account of what he witnessed during the altercation. His testimony carried weight, not just because he was a police officer, but because his description matched perfectly with the security footage submitted earlier. That's when the mediator asked to review the video. As the grainy clip played on a small projector screen, the entire room fell silent. There was no mistaking what happened. Karen yelling aggressively, stepping closer to Alex, and then slapping them hard across the face before storming off. Even Karen couldn't deny what everyone saw. Her face flushed red, and for the first time, she avoided making eye contact with anyone in the room. One by one, the neighbors spoke up, each recounting their perspective of the events. Mrs. Patel described Karen's history of bullying behavior, noting that this wasn't the first time she tried to bend rules to suit herself. Mr. Carter highlighted how unnecessary the confrontation had been, pointing out that there were other solutions, like waiting for another spot to open up, that didn't involve resorting to violence. Each statement chipped away at Karen's credibility, leaving her scrambling to respond. By the time the mediator called for closing remarks, the outcome seemed inevitable. He reminded everyone that the HOA existed to promote harmony within the neighborhood, not to enable personal vendettas or abuse of power. Turning to Karen, he addressed her directly. While disagreements are bound to happen in any community, he said firmly, physical violence is never acceptable. Your actions violated not only basic decency, but also HOA conduct policies. With that, the ruling came down decisively in Alex's favor. Karen was issued a formal warning and fined for her behavior. Additionally, the mediator placed a temporary restraining order between her and Alex, forbidding any further contact. The HOA board promised to revisit its parking policies to prevent similar disputes in the future. As the gavel metaphorically fell, the room erupted into murmurs of approval. Neighbors clapped softly, offering Alex smiles of encouragement. For Karen, the loss was humiliating. She gathered her belongings stiffly, avoiding eye contact with anyone as she hurried out of the room. It was clear her days of unchecked authority were over. And for Alex, the victory felt bittersweet. While justice had been served, they knew the real triumph lay in standing up for themselves and inspiring others to do the same. In the days following the hearing, a noticeable change swept through the neighborhood. It wasn't dramatic or loud, more like the subtle shift of seasons, but it was undeniable. For years, Karen's presence had loomed large over the community, casting a shadow of fear and resentment. People avoided crossing her path, fearing retaliation or unnecessary drama. But now, with the mediator's ruling firmly in place, that shadow began to lift. Neighbors who once tiptoed around her demands started speaking up more openly, emboldened by Alex's courage. One morning, as Alex walked their kids to the bus stop, Mrs. Patel approached them with a warm smile. "You've done something important here," she said, patting Alex's arm gently. "Not just for yourself, but for all of us. That woman has been throwing her weight around for far too long." Other neighbors echoed similar sentiments throughout the week. Mr. Carter even joked about how he'd always wanted to tell Karen off, but never had the guts until now. "Guess you showed us it's possible to stand your ground without losing your cool," he said with a chuckle. The HOA board, meanwhile, scrambled to repair its image. They sent out a formal email acknowledging the incident and promising reforms, not just to parking policies, but also to conflict resolution procedures within the community. A new system was introduced allowing residents to submit anonymous complaints about rule violations or misconduct, ensuring no one person could dominate decision-making again. Though some skeptics whispered that these changes were merely for show, most residents felt hopeful. After all, progress often came in small steps. Karen, on the other hand, became a ghost of her former self. She stopped attending HOA meetings altogether and rarely ventured outside except for quick trips to her car. When she did appear, she kept her head down, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Rumors circulated that she and her husband were considering moving to a different neighborhood, though neither confirmed nor denied them. Whatever the case, her influence had waned significantly, leaving behind an odd sense of relief among the residents. For Alex, life slowly returned to normal, or at least as normal as it could be after such a whirlwind experience. The initial shock of the confrontation faded, replaced by a quiet pride in having stood up not only for themselves but for their community. Their kids, sensing the shift, seemed happier too. One evening, while helping them with homework at the kitchen table, Alex's youngest child looked up and said, "Mom/Dad, I'm glad you didn't let that lady scare you." The simple statement brought tears to Alex's eyes, reminding them why they'd fought so hard in the first place. Still, the experience left lasting lessons. Alex realized that standing up for oneself didn't mean doing it alone. The support from neighbors, Officer Martinez, and even strangers had made all the difference. It taught them the value of community, the power of people coming together when injustice reared its head. And it reinforced the idea that kindness and fairness weren't weaknesses. They were strengths that could inspire others to act with integrity. As weeks turned into months, the neighborhood transformed in subtle ways. Conversations grew friendlier, smiles more frequent. Residents organized a block party to celebrate the start of summer, something that hadn't happened in years. At the event, Alex found themselves surrounded by well-wishers, each offering gratitude for setting an example. Even Mr. Thompson, who had provided the security footage, pulled Alex aside to say, "We needed someone like you," a reminder that we're stronger together. Standing there under twinkling string lights, watching children play and adults laugh, Alex felt a deep sense of peace. They knew challenges would always arise. Life was unpredictable that way. But this moment proved that good could triumph over arrogance and aggression. Justice might not always come easily, but when people stood united, it was possible to create change, however small. And as the night drew to a close, Alex glanced around the lively gathering, feeling grateful for the community they'd helped shape. What had started as a dispute over a parking spot had grown into something much bigger, a catalyst for unity, fairness, and hope. Sometimes, the smallest acts of bravery could spark the greatest transformations, and Alex was living proof of that.